eventually I started doing it on the train.
Oh, wow. Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the KoreKara podcast. We're back at it again, still in video. Look at us go. So today
we upgraded. This time it's better.
Oh, we did upgrade.
Quality.
You're right,
and
you're right.
60 frames per second.
60 FPS, 4K. Hopefully. We'll see how it turns out. Hope you're liking the quality. Hope you're liking us look a little bit more crisp, hopefully. But yeah, today we have a special guest on. We're going to be talking to Chris. I'm sure you've seen him on Matt's channel before when he interviewed him. But today we're going to have him on going through kind of his whole Japanese journey and how he actually got good at Japanese involving light novels, video games, and visual novels. So we're in for a good one today, right?
Yeah, it's good. Classic AJATTer interview. Hope you guys enjoy the podcast. All right, Chris, can you give us a quick background of who you are and where you're at today?
All right, so my name is Chris. I mean, it's actually Christian. I just go by Chris online because it's easier. And you know, I'm from New York City. I'm 19 years old. I've been learning Japanese for a little over probably closing in on 3.5 years now. I made progress videos and I occasionally live stream. I did it a little more often before, but then college happened and then I was like, well, I don't really feel like streaming that much because I'm tired. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much I've really done online. I mean, you know, when people ask for advice, you know, I give them the best advice I can. And yeah,
I mean, I thought it was really interesting. Like, I saw the video where you spoke Japanese after 3 years, and I think you said like you barely spoke Japanese before that point, but then you were still able to be like relatively fluent. Like, how confident were you with your Japanese at that time?
At the time I was more confident than usual because like over winter break I had just like finished in like an 80-hour visual novel. So I was it's 80-hour visual novel, but there was like a decent amount of the game where it was gameplay, but it was still nonetheless like reading a ton and listening a ton. So I was really immersed in Japanese at that time. So when I was speaking for that, because I also did like a few practice runs just to make sure I could get my like speaking sort of together. I was pretty confident. Like I was pretty confident in expressing myself for a decent amount of time. Because I mean, even the first one when I was terrible, you know, I could go on and on and on. Because I mean, like if you've seen any of the other like interviews I've been in, it's like I can really go talking nonstop. So. Because it's just, I don't know, like when I'm in front of the camera, it's just like I just go on and on. And
so do you feel less confident now that you've gotten better, or do you feel more
confident? No. Currently I would feel less confident just because I haven't been doing as much listening lately. So I feel like my confidence depends on like how actively I'm like sort of practicing my speaking and whether or not I've been doing anything related to listening. So whether it's because even if I'm reading a visual novel, I'm at least, you know, getting Japanese through my ears. But if it's just reading books, then it's like like yeah, I'm confident in my comprehension, but speaking, So
I've never read a visual novel. How does that compare to like just watching anime with subtitles? Is it like the same?
No, because the benefit you get from visual novels is like, it's like reading a manga. No. It's like reading a light novel with pictures with voice acting. That's what it's like. But it's like but it's a really long light novel, you know, like because you know it's not like, you know, because one light novel, depending on the difficulty, I could finish in like 1 or 2 days. But a visual novel, you know, that's like but usually the ones I play are usually upwards of like 30 hours long. So yeah, but I think the benefit of visual novels is that you're not really that conscious of like how, you know, because when you're reading a book, I don't know about you guys, but for me, I'm always paying attention to the page number, because of school, because there's always read up to this certain page, so I'm always conscious of how many pages I'm reading, and it makes me read less because I'm focusing less on like the book and more like, how many pages have I read today? But when I read a visual novel, I'm just like, dude, I just want to know what happens next. Like I just keep clicking. I just keep going. And so, yeah, visual novel is kind of like reading like a light novel, but except that you have the visuals with you and you have voice with you, and you just have tons of text to go through. And I think because of that, visual novels are arguably one of the best ways to get really good at reading really, really quickly. Because you don't really, because you're not like sitting down and reading, because you're still essentially playing a game. So you're not really thinking of it as like, oh, I'm sitting down and doing a bunch of reading. It's like, damn, like I just want to sit down and find out what happens in this visual novel, because this is really good. And so,
is that how you got into Japanese, or?
One of the reasons, yeah. My main reason at first was because there was this one series I was playing at the time, the Legend of Heroes series, and there's now 10 moving on to the 11th game, I believe. And so I finished like the first 2 games in the first and third arc, and so then I was just missing like the third game in the first arc and the 2 games in the second arc. And this was around the time where I started doing AJATT, and I was just like, well, I could buy a PS Vita and play the Japanese version and hack it and play the Japanese versions. And like I ended up doing that like 6 months in, and it's kind of funny because out of the 3 games I was gonna play in Japanese, because those were like the first games I would ever play, and they're really dialogue heavy. Like there's a lot of reading, but the thing is, the good part is that the PS Vita versions all had voice acting while the originals didn't. So I was going in there's like, I was already like 6 months into listening to Japanese, so I was like, okay, well, my listening is okay. I can somewhat understand, like I can follow along with the plot. I could try using a Japanese guide because I got all these dictionaries and stuff to help me with it. And I just went through it, and it was kind of funny because once I started playing the game, I couldn't put it down.
So you could understand enough at that point. 6 months
I could, like, especially because all the visuals help, and like context too, because I've kind of played the game surrounding the ones I was playing. Like I played the other arcs that were like sort of connected to what I was playing, and so if I wasn't sure about something, I had like some information from the other game that I already knew, and I was like, oh, so this is happening during this time in this other game, blah blah blah. So
yeah, like how many hours were you studying or immersing at maybe that point?
Anywhere from 2 to 4 hours, roughly. Cause especially when I was remembering the kanji in the first like the 4 months.
Oh right.
Yeah. Oh, those days, those were hard days. I only got maybe about an hour and a half, 2 hours of immersion, cause when you're doing like 25 to 30 new cards of remembering the kanji, and you have like 150 to 180 reviews, and that takes you 2.5 hours to go through.
So you were able to actually finish it and go through?
No, I finished. Yeah, well, because by the 3rd month I was already cutting down my new cards to like 10 because I couldn't take it anymore.
Right.
And I was tired, and so yeah, because I was basically doing remembering the kanji like every waking moment, like every moment of free time that I had, like from the moment I woke up. It's like I eat breakfast, do remembering the kanji until I leave for school. Eventually I started doing it on the train.
Oh wow.
Dude, I was different during that time, man. Like I would like take my phone and I like just sketch like what the kanji was, because I couldn't write it out on paper. I was like, well, this is close enough, and I don't have time to be doing this, like, because I do it, once I get to school, pull out my notebook and I start doing it like like before class starts, and then during lunch, and dude.
So did you get like PTSD with Anki? Because
yeah,
I think you said you didn't really like Anki after that.
No, I didn't. Like, I think the most I used Anki after that was actually that winter break where I was reading that visual novel. I was reading it was called Baldur's Sky, and because one of my friends read it in English, and he was like, dude, this is the best thing ever. I was like, oh, let's give it a try, and I read it, and I was hooked. But yeah, I was using it because, I was running into words. I was like, you know what? This would be a good time to use Anki to retain some of this stuff. But other than like when I'm like really reading a visual novel, I usually don't use Anki that often. Mostly because I really love the convenience of being able to read my light novels either on my phone or on my Kindle. Because also when I got Kindle on my phone, I was like, yeah, I didn't think it was gonna be that good. But when I got a new phone that was nicer and had a better screen, I was like, oh, no wonder people use this. And so it was like, for me, it was just more of, I'm tired of doing Anki, and it's nice to be able to like read while like laying on my couch. It was much more enjoyable for me. I haven't finished reading. I haven't gotten to like the meat of the light novel yet, but it was reincarnated as a sword, and it was like, I think it was like at the time it was like 100 yen. I was like, dude, what? Excuse
like, sign me up.
I was like, so I got the first 2 volumes. The second volume was like 300. I was like, I'm for like $4 or $5. I'm getting the first one. Hell yeah. And so stuff like that happens, or then I'll read like a book from one series, maybe pay full price or whatever, and I'm like, bro, this is too good, and then I keep hitting the buy button for the next volumes every time I finish one. It's just like, dude.
That's how they get you.
No, because is when you have that buy one click. That's. It's like you finish the light novel. It's like, you want the next one? I'm like, hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Like, since you don't do Anki, do you look up a lot of the words that you've looked up before? Do you find that happen?
Yeah, no, most definitely. I do that all the time. Especially when it's words that usually only come up in certain like works. Like they don't, like, I see it in like, maybe one visual or one light novel, but I don't see them that often in others. So like when it comes to visual novels, there's a very big spread in terms of difficulty with depending on the visual novel. So like the hardest ones and the easiest ones, like it's night and day, the difficulty difference. So like something for like Dies Irae, that's like at the top tier of difficulty, just because of like the obscure language, some of the segments where they have stuff written in just katakana, which is like the bane of everyone who speaks Japanese, including Japanese people. Because if you've seen any like YouTube video of Japanese people reading like visual or something, you run into that katakana section, that's where they get stuck every time. So it's not just the learners.
What do you mean, like a whole Japanese paragraph in katakana?
Yeah.
Oh, I've never seen that.
Yeah, no,
no,
dude. Every time I see those, I'm just like, yeah, I'm not bothering. Like, I'm
skip.
This is where the author decided to screw everyone over. Like, all right, it's on you guys now.
It's like, bro, like, I'm good.
I've seen like when they have a foreigner speak in a novel, they use like katakana to show that it's like heavily. They have a heavy accent. The konnichiwa, but it's like in katakana.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And I guess like rewinding a little bit now, we kind of talked about some of your light novel experiences, but how did you actually get into AJATT itself?
Okay, so I started AJATT in 2018, but me trying to learn Japanese started in 2017. Because, I got that Genki textbook and it put me to sleep, so I was like, okay, I'm done. Like, I just wasted money. Okay. Then I come to, a Japanese English language exchange server. It's like, okay, cool. Now I'm wasting my time instead of learning Japanese. Uh-huh. And so, because, it's like after 5 months when you're still struggling with like, the same one volume of manga, then you're doing something wrong. So I was like, dude, what was that? But then I remembered because, I encountered Matt in one of the voice calls at one time. This was when like Matt was, not the current Matt. It was back when he was still like, dude, why aren't people learning like this? Why are they wasting their time? This doesn't make sense. If you do it like this, you'll be good. And it was more where like people would get, it was back in those days of Matt, where he wasn't as like, he didn't understand how people work as much. Right. And but it kind of stuck with me, because I was like, you know what, this dude's really good at Japanese. Let me check his videos. Maybe he's got a point. And I started watching the videos, like, you know what? This actually kind of makes sense. Because my Spanish got better when I took AP Spanish with, with my teacher who was speaking Spanish all the time. My Spanish improves greatly during that time. Like, my parents were like, what the? Why is your Spanish so much better? And so, yeah. So, because we mostly speak English in the house. Because, mostly because of me and my siblings. But, yeah.
Right.
But I was like, okay, this kind of makes sense. So I was just like, well, I saw also Brit versus Japan's progress because he was like the first person I saw besides Matt to actually like log. Well, he was the first one to log his progress that I saw. With the AJATT method, and I was like, like I could tell that like the Japanese wasn't perfect because I knew what it sounded like with anime, but I was like, but he's getting somewhere. Like, he can read, and that's what I care about more, because I want to be able to read stuff. So I was just like, okay, well, let's give this a shot for like 1 month, and I'll make like a progress video after the first month, because the worst thing that happens is when you say you're gonna do something and then you don't do it. So let me do it first, and then I'll talk about it. And so that's where that, like 50-minute long video came from. I can't believe people actually watched that. Oh my god. But it was really cool though, because a lot of other people were starting to do it at around the same time. And so it was just like cool, because it's just like, okay, so this guy's doing it, this guy's doing it, and that guy's doing it. Oh man, well, I got competition. So it wasn't like competing, but it was like, I could talk to people about it, and it was pretty cool. So that's kind of how I got into AJATT at the beginning. That's also the reason why I started remembering the kanji and went so hard on it, because I was like, dude, kanji was driving me nuts. I was like, dude, how do you figure this out? Like, how do you remember this? And so that's why I did remember the kanji, to help me be able to retain like what I see, because most of the time it's just like, even if I can remember like the meaning of a word, I can't remember the character, and it's driving me nuts. Like, I see it like 15 times, but I still don't remember it. So yeah, that's what pushed me towards like immersive learning. It kind of made sense to me with like how my Spanish improved, even though it's my first language, but living in the States and whatnot. So yeah.
Right. I guess like when you were going hard at AJATT, did you have Japanese friends, or was it mostly like other people learning Japanese?
No, I had no Japanese friends at all. I had two friends in my school who were Japanese. They were twins, but like, it's not like the Japanese was like particularly good. Like, it was typical, like, Japanese American, like, the English is great, the Japanese not so much. So I think it was virtually like non-existent at the time. Like, it was enough to where it was pretty negligible. I had one friend who's actually like, he could read and stuff like that, but it was just jokes and little jokes here and there and stuff like that, just because my level wasn't up to par yet.
Really?
I graduated before, I think even before the year and a half, because I started in my junior year. No, it was like maybe after a year and a half when I graduated, but he was missing for like half of the like school year, right, or whatever. So so yeah.
And I guess now, kind of looking kind of overall now, you spent, I guess now, over 3 years learning Japanese, kind of gone through a lot with your experiences here. You had your Anki grinds when you were built different to start it off, and kind of gone through a lot of anime, light novels, visual novels, manga. So would you say at this point you're satisfied with how your Japanese level is at right now?
With speaking, not really, but that's just because I don't really have a place to use it, so that's why I'm kind of just like throwing it to the side at the moment, because I'm not gonna worry that much about something I'm not gonna use. Reading, it's kind of mixed feelings, because it really depends on what I'm reading, because with some light novels, it's really easy to the point where I could finish a light novel in a day.
Right.
But with and a lot of light novels are, they're relatively easy. They don't take long for me to get through. It's just more of like, I kind of keep end up looking up the same words over and over. That's what typically happens. But with certain visual novels that I want to read, like the
the difficulty curve is a lot harder, and so in that sense I still do want to improve my reading, because I want to be able to like read through those like with relative ease. But that would take a while, because there's a lot of vocabulary that's just like I'm not really gonna get much of it anywhere else, so it's gonna take time before I can get to the point where I can read stuff like that and not really have a need to pull out a dictionary. But it's also like one of these things where, like, you know, for native speakers of a language, like, you know, we're not really that bothered when we see words that we don't know. Generally, like when we're reading, like it doesn't stand out as much compared to your second language. In second language, it stands out way more. It stands out like a sore thumb. You're like, dude, what was this word? And you're like, dude, wait, how do I figure out what the whole sentence means without this word? While in your native language, you're like, yeah, I'm understanding most of it, so it's fine. But no, with Japanese, it just like stands out like a sore thumb. I'm just like, oh my god. So yeah, I think where I could avoid less of those situations where like I have these like words just stick out that I don't know, and I'm just like, oh my god, here we go again. I gotta learn something. Like, not that oh my god, I gotta learn something else, but it's like, oh my god, like it's breaking my immersion again. You know, like when I'm getting to a really good part, because, you know, I'm getting to the good part, like I don't have time to be looking at a dictionary. Like I'm trying to get to the story. So yeah, so where I could have a little less of those interruptions, probably where I would want to get. It's just gonna take time, because I have to be consistently reading for a certain period of time, and reading things at that difficulty level for a while before I can really do that. And even, you know, just read more like a variety, like more stuff outside of light novels, visual, like aside of the like kind of the weeb stuff, like just, you know, get into you know, maybe into more of the fictional or fantasy stuff that's like not anime related in Japanese and stuff like that.
Right.
Because I do have one novel like that, and from what I read so far, it's pretty interesting, and it is a series, and it is a lot different in terms of how it uses its vocabulary and stuff like that. So yeah, eventually I want to do more of that. It's just I'm not my head, that's not where my head is right now, really. So
okay, Chris, yeah, so at the end of the podcast, what we usually do is we have a fun little message, a KoreKara message to our listeners, and it could be anything, like a Japanese proverb, like a new word you learned, or just like any message you want to tell the listeners. So I'm gonna put you on the spot right now. What is your message to the KoreKara listeners?
The last thing I'll have to say is just do your thing, bruh. Like what like, I don't know what else to say.
Just
it's
do
just
your
like,
thing, bro.
You do
Let's
you.
go.
I don't know. Like, I was trying to think of something funny or cool, but it's just like, man, bro,
Just do your thing.
have fun, enjoy life, and don't think too hard with Japanese, please. Like, it's not as hard as you think it is. First couple months feels like it's pain, but you know, once you start understanding somewhat, it gets better. I mean, don't get me wrong, I kind of forget what the feeling feels like, and I'm glad I do, because it was painful. But you know, it's like, yeah, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. Enough people have done it. You'll be good. So yeah.
Great.
That's all I really got to say. I'm not that creative.
And on that note, Chris, thank you so much for coming on the KoreKara podcast today. It's been a pleasure having you on. Really, it's been a really fun conversation. Where can everyone here listening find you?
All right. So I have my Twitter, which I'm assuming it'll be in the description. I'll send it to you guys. Well, actually, you guys have it. What am I talking? Yeah, and my YouTube basically is just like where I just stream time to time when I have excess free time.
Right.
I just stream some game. Sometimes in Japanese, sometimes it's not, but yeah, it's just to chill out and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't use any other socials.
All right, guys,
Yeah.
Make sure to show Chris some love here. It's been a fun one today, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.
to the KoreKara listeners?
Yo, I gotta think of like a word or something. Like I don't.
It could be anything.
I mean, it doesn't have to
Yo.
be like a Japanese thing. It could just be like,
Trying to think something that's like not atypical, like, not atypical closer, like, yo, you know what? Yo, I want to find like a cool word that like that's just like a random fact, like
Google cool words.
Japanese.
Yo, this is so hard. I'm trying to think of something. I'm so desperate. I'm looking through Discord right now. Oh my god, like a fun ending or something like that. Whenever it's phrases or just single word. Let's see. Yeah, I was gonna say no pain, no gain, but it's like. Last piece of advice or whatever. Or fun thing. Okay.
It'd be funny if I just include all this in there.
Actually, you probably should include that part. It's like.